weekend, and we are going beyond the strange with host Dave Cruz on Spaced Out Saturday Nights.
He's a killer! He's a killer! He's a menace!
Follow Dave on Twitter at StrangeDave70. Hit him up on Skype, Strange Days 2015. And you can follow Dave on our website, spacedoutradio.com. On tight as Spaced Out Saturday with Dave Cruz begins right now. You're here to turn me inside out and then turn me away. Follow my life like joke on clouds of fake and smoke until my body and soul was burning away.
Hey everyone, welcome. Hang on one second there. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spaced Out Saturday Nights. I am your host, Dave Cruz. And I don't know what's going on with the audio. It sounded great earlier, so it should be clearing up here any moment now. So I am checking out this Spreaker chat right now, and if you guys have any comments, let me know. We'll see how that audio is doing. All right. So, again, nice to be here with you all. Tonight is Saturday night. It is September 2nd. It's Sunday, September 3rd. Let's see here. If you're on the East Coast. And we are live. I'm not sure what is happening, y'all, with I'll tell you what, why don't we just go to a quick break, and I will see if everyone is hearing this okay. All right? All right.
Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god BUMBLEFOOT, we own the night.
Got ready for bed on Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines. Your answers are a click away.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for bearing with us. Had to kick out those little gnomes, those pesky little critters that Dave Scott's always complaining about. Yes, they do cause havoc, and had to kick them a couple times. They just wouldn't go away. All right, let's start this over again with Ola, and welcome to Spaced Out Saturday Night. I am your host, Dave Cruz. Nice to be here with y'all. Tonight is Saturday, September 2nd, Sunday, September 3rd. If you're on the East Coast, we are live here on the West Coast from the Napa Valley wine country, just outside the mystical Sonoma Mountains. Join us now, as we will be here every Saturday night. All right. I'm glad that things are working good. Anyways, let's welcome in everyone listening on our terrestrial stations, WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM. In the New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. You can also listen to us live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker.com, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on... That's right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Oh, this is too funny. Anyways, again, like our music, and then rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy, and Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Also, you can check us out on Twitter, and that is, man, this really is just one of those nights. It's live radio. You can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give us our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at StrangeDave70. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We are also on RadioGuide.fm and TalkStream Live and Stitcher. Of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. If you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. Thanks, Dino. I appreciate that. If you want to take part in the show, please sign into one of our chat rooms on our website at Spreaker.com, the UPRN chat room, and right now, the new Facebook Spaced Out Saturday Nights Facebook page. Or if you're on Twitter, just go to the hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and I will get to your questions in there as well. If you head over to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store and pick up a t-shirt, posters, or an SOR sticker. We have the Encounter online that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out Dave Scott's latest blog there as well. And if you have had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tim Doyle of UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also have some great video viewing there as well. Sebastien Martin is an entrepreneur who has built international health food brands over a decade with offices in the USA, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand. 5 years ago, Sebastien had a close encounter of a fifth kind with a stellar being from the Pleiades in his living room and had communications with him at the rest of his star family ever since. This one-of-a-kind disturbing experience has forced Sebastien to resort to the services of a hypnotherapist to help him with the anxiety arising from his life-changing encounter. Detailed memories were extracted from these sessions, providing critical information about the Galactic Alliance agenda, split souls, human consciousness, and much, much more. Everyone, please help me welcome Sebastien Martin. Sebastien, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Dave, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it. And, it's one of those late night ones, and it's where live radio is just the best thing because stuff like this happens, and you get all these weird little things going on at the beginning of the show, but they seem to be ironing out now, so everything's all good. Our audio seems to be working pretty fine.
Excellent.
But anyways, yeah, man, thanks again for coming back on the show. I know you've been on SOR with Dave Scott. Dave seems to be rocking with Guns N' Roses. I'm not sure if he's still with them, but yeah. That was I wish I could have been there last night, but he asked me to fill in for him, so I couldn't say no.
Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to this 3-hour encounter. That's going to be quite fun.
Absolutely. We are definitely going to have some fun, man. Like I said, anything can happen on live radio. So there you go. And everybody listening right now, if you're in any of the Spreaker, any of the chat rooms like Spreaker Chat or even Twitter, please type your questions in bold for Sebastien, and I will get them to him. And we'll just go from there. But let's talk a little bit about I'll tell you what. This is your night, Sebastien. Where do you want to go tonight first?
Well, I guess it's really more about where I left off with you last time, and or what people know about me at this stage, and what I could say about my latest experiences, I guess. I've kind of decided to go away and walk away from radio shows for quite some time. I was quite regular on many radio shows, and I've been on Kerry Cassidy's show as well. And, very soon after that, I felt that I was talking about my past experiences and didn't really leave much room for the experiences I was supposed to be embracing and learning from. So that's the reason why I've been quiet for so long. Probably has been about 6 months now, and I'm glad I did it. In fact, the reason why I've decided to agree on this show tonight is because there are some let's say discoveries that I've made that I think needs to be shared. And from my last talks with you and my last experiences with Kerry, a lot of things have happened. So I think the last interview I've done was back in at the UFO Congress in Arizona back in February. And from that side of things, that I went back to Canada, and very soon after, on the same day, basically I was attacked by what I would call Men in Black. As soon as I decided to switch off my light, going to sleep, I could see this being walking towards me. And it was, I would say, pretty frightening, but I didn't have much time to really think about it. And for whatever reason, I jumped out of bed. And my wife was right next to me, and she was not asleep yet. It was pitch black. I just switched off the light. And when I jumped out of bed, I could see this man walking towards me. He had a bald head, and I could see some light shining on his head. And he really was approaching me with a very decisive, method. He wanted to harm me. He wanted to hurt me somehow. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I faced him, right away, I didn't think. I almost imagined calling upon the white light, from the light source. And my Kundalini awoke. I could feel the strange vibration in my back and basically just rising up, above my head. And I blasted him with some energy that completely shattered his intent, I guess, or his energy being, because I could see some sparks of light of orange and red ashes almost floating in the air. And even my wife saw them too. She asked me, what was that, and very quietly I went back to bed and I said, it's nothing, just go back to sleep or go to sleep, don't worry about that. And at that moment, I just realized that, yes, I was probably being targeted. Yes, I was being watched somehow based on what I was discovering and seeing. My experience is one out of many. I'm not very unique in that sense. It's just that I don't really fully understand what I'm seeing sometimes. Basically, I could be doing some, remote viewing, which is something that everybody is able to do. We just forgot, how to experience it and how to trigger it. For some reason, I was able to experience that in many situations, and completely random, by the way, just without knowing what was going on. And sometimes I could focus on certain aspect of my life and have very clear thoughts on what I was seeing. And so, I could control it to some extent. So very soon after that, I decided to stay quiet. I felt that it was a bit too much to bear. I could feel some energy attacking me at one point. I was having a bath because my whole body felt achy. And I took some Epsom salt, in the bath. And I was feeling that some energy was radiating through my whole body. And I had an interview scheduled with, basically some guy in Vancouver. And I've canceled it because I didn't want to, pay too much attention to the public and share my stories at that point. I wasn't really feeling that it was the right time. So I basically was having this bath when all of a sudden I just realized that someone was targeting me, was attacking me. And that's when I decided to protect myself. And protecting myself was pretty much the same way, which was kind of a weird way of doing things. Again, naturally, I was thinking of, when you meditate, you can imagine a ball of protection or a ball of light around yourself. And I could very clearly imagine this blue ball of light around my body, but supplemented by a white, thicker ball of light that was going around my body. And I would say almost instantly the pain went away. So I knew that I was not really paying too much attention to that, and that was my mistake. It hasn't occurred since, and I've been pretty careful that way. There was one aspect in my life after that when I woke up in the middle of the night, and I could see a golden light basically in the corridor of my house and from my bedroom door. And I thought that was just the light being left on. Right away, the first second when I woke, that was the first thought that came through my mind, to my mind. And very quickly I realized that no, it was not the light in the corridor. It was a ball of energy that was closing down. It was basically a ball of energy of a golden color, and it was closing down. And as it was closing down, I could see some small, tiny hands inside it, all around it. It was very weird. And when I woke up, I basically just was trying to catch my breath. It was as if I was going for a marathon beforehand. It was a very weird thing, very weird sensation. So I wasn't quite sure exactly where I went there, but I certainly, probably experienced something that I haven't even tried to look at. But either I was taken or I was taken on a multidimensional journey, who knows. But that was the latest experience I had. And so after that, I decided to pay attention to what was going on in the ufology world, on the scene with Corey Good and all the turmoil that was going on, as you can imagine, and you're aware of that yourself.
Right.
And that whole situation was making me realize that the whole business of entertainment didn't really care so much about the actual truth. It was more about paying attention to the hype, what was going on. Everybody had their own stories, but once again, the aspect of very good story, and again, this is what Richard Dolan was mentioning as well many times, is that it cannot be proven. And this is the biggest problem that we are being faced today, is we are being mocked more and more by the grave assaults, done on the ufology movement, and New Age movement is actually part of that, because unfortunately we accept at face value whatever stories people have to share, and I'm pretty part of that too. But what I'm saying is, the more I was listening to these stories, the more I was thinking, Richard is right. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to have more, basically more facts on the subject. It is hard to get facts based on whatever is secret, whatever is protected. But at the same time, there's also money to be made in this industry, and I would call it an industry because that's what it has become. And in order for people to start making money, they have to be invited on events, they have to be paid, they have some demands, saying, well, I want to be paid that much, or I want to have, that kind of hotel and these sort of things to be doing a presentation. And the stardom factor and the cult factor is really something that I was trying to avoid at all costs. And unfortunately, with the amount of people contact me as well through Facebook and Messenger and these sort of things, I just didn't want to trigger that whatsoever. I didn't need that. I really wasn't looking for that. I was just trying to share a message, and that was it. So after listening to more and more of these interviews, and with Bill Ryan as well, and I was just thinking, well, there's too much going on in that industry right now, and it is being targeted for sure. Yet, there are some facts that are arising from all these conversations, is the fact that there are no facts. So we need to really focus more on that. And my focus with Ensuho, my website, was to bring more interviews with PhDs and people with some serious backgrounds, some more legitimate backgrounds that people could verify. And I was feeling that in a way it was also losing track. I was attracting more and more people who had some experience to share, some stories to share. And that's fine. I mean, on the consciousness aspect, it's so, it's not something you can touch. You have to experience it through meditation or, through, different means. But physically is what we're lacking is we are living within this dimension that is so dense that we forget that in order to reach the higher aspect of dimensions or higher levels of dimensions or frequencies, this is not something we can do with, with our current vision, with our current senses. So that was actually creating a major issue in my life. And so because I wasn't quite sure exactly how to get there and how to cross that bridge, I've decided to simply walk away and learn some more from my experiences, just welcome whatever was coming. And I had a very strange experience one night where I was in my living room again, and I was just watching TV. I was not really doing anything unusual or meditating or anything else, when I heard some footsteps in my corridor, and thinking it was my wife coming in and say, hey, come back to bed or something, or go to bed. And our son was actually sleeping in our bed. He woke up and felt like he had to be in our bed. He's only 4. And so then I basically put the TV on pause, and I just walked in the corridor to realize that there was nobody. And then I saw this silhouette that was in the corridor that was Zor. So for whoever doesn't know my story, and Zor is my younger brother from the Pleiades who came to see me back in November of 2011. So in my bio, you mentioned it was 5 years ago, and it's almost like clocking up, 6 to 7 years. Right. But that's okay. It's interesting that this time Zor didn't show up as his full body the way he does normally show himself as, and I could only see his contours and the blue glow around his being. I knew it was him. And it was non-frightening. I wasn't scared or, taken aback by this, sight. But what was interesting is, once again, I've lost time, and I've lost memory from that event. When I was in the corridor, the next thing I remember was I was in my son's bed. Remember that my son was sleeping in our bed with my wife, and so I was for some reason projected into his bed, and I was moving. I was tossing around on my front. I was not sleeping. I didn't feel like I was sleeping, or it was a very weird sensation. So when I regained consciousness, I guess I just stood up, and I wasn't quite sure exactly what was going on at that point. So I walked back into the corridor and went back into the living room, and everything was switched off. The TV was off. The lights were off. Everything was off. It was a kind of a strange, sensation. It was almost like as if I couldn't remember what was going on and where I was almost. But very soon after, I decided not to wake up my wife and went back to my son's bed, and I lay down there, and I was again in the same state. I was just too unnerved to really fall asleep again or sleep. And so I decided to sit down on the bed, and very, very, very quickly after that, that's when a voice came in. I didn't know exactly. I couldn't even describe what it was or who he was. But that voice told me to meditate, and I rarely meditate. But when I do, I know that it's kind of a profound experience for me. Like my whole body vibrates, and I definitely know I will be going on a certain journey or exploration of some sort. This time around was slightly different. As soon as I started to relax and meditate sitting down in the bed, I could see some sparks of light in the room. And my eyes were closed at that point, and I could see those sparks of lights. So, I didn't really pay too much attention to them. When all of a sudden I could feel like there were some golden rings that were emerging from nowhere. And they were fairly large enough that I was in the middle of those rings. So they were basically going below my body. And there were two of them, and they were going in different directions. So they would start moving very, very fast, and to a point where they became very bright and very golden. And it was forming a golden circle or like sphere almost. And I was in the middle of that. And they were still moving and speeding up, and I could feel the motion. There was some kind of very deep sound emerging from, this kind of meditation. People may call it like an om, almost like an like sun energy, I would say, that was around there. And the sparks of light were still in the room, and they were becoming more frequent. And so as this was going on, because I felt so intrigued by this energy that was emerging, that I opened my eyes, even if I was still in a meditative state, and I could still see those rings, and I could still see those sparks of lights in the room. But further down, like close to the wall, the back wall, I could see some black silhouettes. So there were some beings there present. They didn't seem to be harming me. They were just curious, I guess. They were just observing. And I didn't pay too much attention to them. I didn't try to, ask them who they were or what they were doing there. I still came back into my meditative state. And that's when I decided to explore, like through my third eye, I guess, or my mind, that all of a sudden some mandalas started to form underneath me. And some of them were very small, in a square shape, and I couldn't understand what they were. They were all very beautiful, and with different colors too, and they were forming some lines. Some of them were as large as the room. Some of them were just as white, plain white lines. And all of these lines started to reshape themselves and forming some sort of code. And I didn't know what the code was or anything else, but the code basically just kept going on, and the carpet of mandalas was flowing downstream, basically on a 5% decline angle in front of me, like if I was on a moving carpet. And so at that point, I heard a very clear message that came through that said the Anunnaki would basically be waiting for us in the fourth dimension, and that the Pleiadians were deceived. So that was a very strange message in a way, because I didn't know what to interpret that. But I did mention it afterwards to even Kerry Cassidy, and I tried to explain it, but it's just it didn't make any sense. What is the fourth dimension? Is it the rapture process? Are we going to be dying and we'll be moving to the fourth dimension from the third dimension? So again, the lack of explanation or description about that was quite daunting to me, and I slept on it. After the message was finished, the mandala stopped, and the ball of light dissipated, and everything was gone. Right. Very, very quickly after that. And when it stopped, and I wasn't feeling that intrigued at that point. I went to sleep. I just closed my eyes and slept like a baby, and I woke up in the morning, and everything was back to normal, obviously. But the whole idea always, for some reason, stayed in the back of my mind, thinking, what this is all about. And I don't really pay too much attention to what's going on with the Anunnaki, but I do pay a lot of attention to synchronicity. And the Anunnaki and even Planet X, people mention that. I just recently came across a documentary about how people were seeing Planet X through even the eclipse that happened in August. And I was thinking, well, it is intriguing, it is interesting, because there are certain events that will occur and we are right in the middle of it. And so it is very timely. And I'm definitely more and more, day by day now, seeing the change that is occurring. That, yes, there will be probably a major event occurring on September 23rd of this year, leading up to the tribulations of what is mentioned in the Bible. And we'll be seeing some major events probably in November of 2024. And they mention even the date of the 11th of November, which is interesting because that date is the date when Zoe showed up in my living room in 2011. So that was on the 11th of November, 2011. So 11/11/11. And so that was a fairly interesting date to me when I saw that. And again, I don't fully understand what's going on. What is the meaning of it? Why? Maybe the date was important to Zoe to show up in my living room at that stage back in 2011. But if I feel that I'm somehow important in that process, I don't think I'm that important. I think it's just the way it is. I think it's just happening to many other people around the planet. I'm just one of these people who just tapped into this message or synchronicity in some sort of way. The same way as people are very enlightened in a way where they can see the 11/11 or 1/11 or whatever. So I think these kind of figures or math equations, whatever it is to do with the universe. I'm not that math savvy to fully understand what's going on, but if they are playing tricks with us, it's very well done, and they certainly have a good laugh out there. But it's definitely a window of opportunity for us to learn about what's going on, and I do pay attention to this, and I take it very seriously. So from that event, I kind of left everything behind. I decided to keep it quiet, lay low, go back to my family, stop the interviews, and that was okay, until I was planning on going to Europe for 6 weeks with my family, and we went to France and England. And while being in England, I basically was getting bored. My wife was with her family, and we're not really doing much. So I've decided to fly over to Scotland for 3 days. And that's what happened. I took a flight there for 3 days, and I've met a very, very interesting guy. First of all, I stayed with Peter Brohan, who is he was a producer for Rob Roy, the movie. I don't know if you watched it. It was like from the 1990s with Liam Neeson. And the Scottish guy, we both met in Arizona, and we befriended each other. And I've asked him if he was around if I decided to come over to Scotland, and he invited me to stay at his house with his wife. And he was such a great guy. He decided to plan my 3-day trip. It was such a short trip, but at that point he invited in Nick Kyle, a guy who was an assistant principal at a high school in Scotland, in Glasgow. And the same day when I arrived, he invited Nick, and Nick decided to bring in a young guy by the name of Dominic Boag, B-O-A-G. And the guy was a medium. So my story with mediums is very scarce. I never really paid too much attention to it. I may have met some mediums and psychics, but I never really had an actual reading for myself. I never really truly believed in it in a way, being somehow skeptic in a way. You wouldn't believe so, but I am. And so I kind of left it in when he came over. Nick was telling me that he was the ex-president of the Paranormal Society in Scotland, and that he briefed Dominic saying that he was going to be meeting a French guy called Sebastien from France, and that's it. And he offered me to do a reading for an hour, and I kind of welcomed it. I said, sure, why not? I don't know what to expect from it. And as we sat down, Dominic explained to me very briefly about who he was, and that he was a young guy of 26 years old who turned blind, or was turning blind at the age of 14 years old when his dad passed away. And he developed his psychic abilities at that stage, which was quite fascinating. And Nick didn't really say much about him or what was going on with him, but I've learned more things about him afterwards. But what was very striking is the first thing he asked me was during that reading was to stay quiet and just answer with yes or no, and that's it. So he warned me in advance, saying, I know that you basically are from France, that your name is Sebastien, and that's all I know about you. So that's pretty much it. So it was a very, raw virgin ground where he started from, and right away he tapped into the certain energy, I guess, and he started telling me that I had a family of 4, and that my son was the youngest, and I had a daughter. That's how he started off right away. And then
you weren't aware of him able to pick up right away, were you?
He picked up. He basically picked it up right away. He just closed his eyes.
That's amazing.
And within 2 seconds, he started talking. And he speaks very fast. He's a Scottish guy too, so you can imagine with the accent. So it
Actually,
was yes. So it was a very interesting conversation in a way. I mean, I was only saying yes or no, and to be honest with you, as he was going on, and I won't go into the details, but he mentioned my father-in-law that I'd never met, and he basically thanked me for giving my children his last name. And I mean, that was very striking as well, that he knew that detail. And you mentioned William, which is my son's name, was saying Billy, and then he says it's mentioned twice. And Dominic and I were basically pondering over that, thinking, what does it mean? And so we kind of left it behind and we just moved on. And until the evening when I just realized by calling my wife, and I, briefed her on what happened that day. And I've asked her, so was not your dad's second name William? And she said yes. So that's probably why he was thanking me for, like, twice. He was thanking me for giving his last name to my children, so to his grandchildren, and giving also his second name to our son, which was not voluntary, by the way. It was something that we decided on. That was a name that we could use both in French and English. And so that was fairly striking, but not to the extent when my best friend, who passed away in a car crash in France, showed up. And he almost showed up as a spirit guide. And there's no way that Dominic would have known about him, because I never wrote about him on Facebook or my father-in-law either. But the thing is, there was no way he would have been able to guess this information anywhere. I never mentioned it on radio shows or TV or anything else. So it's definitely something I knew you would have not been able to guess so easily. And when you mentioned him, he said, I can see this young man, in the backseat of a car, and he died in a car crash. And that's exactly what happened. They just came out of a discotheque, and they just burnt a stop sign, and a truck hit them. And so they pretty much all died, but the driver, funny enough, and well, it's not funny, but the expression was that he passed away, and I could always feel that connection with my best friend. I could see and I could feel his last breath. And that's a very strange, odd sensation. When I knew when he died that it was quick, and I always had this very strong connection with him. And when I went to France, I decided to go to his grave and meet with his brother, who was on site. And we talked about him again and everything else. And so when I went to Scotland, I was not really thinking that he would show up, and he did. And he almost came as a spirit guide. And unlike my father-in-law or my grandfather, who also showed up, was laughing about my son's hair, which was an interesting, discussion there as well, because, my grandfather showed up saying that he basically was apologetic for, treating me like I was supposed to be manual, and that I had a piece of grass growing in the middle of my palms. To say that, the grass will always grow because I was not manual. I was not using my hands to do something with it. And he could not understand that. Being intellectual to him was not something he could understand or fathom. And so the expression that Dominic used to describe that was quite striking. And I was very moved by this conversation because, this reading was so profound and so detailed and so quick that I was really, really amazed by what he could come up with. But when my best friend showed up, and showing up as a spirit guide almost, and saying that he was there because he wanted to thank me for not only sending a note to his parents when he passed away, but also to go on his grave and to speak to his brother. And that's why it was so recent that he had to be there and to talk to me. And the first thing that Dominic mentioned, which you'll be aware of that, is what Dominic said is, you've seen this ET being with his big eyes, which was Zoe. When he showed up in my dreams at night, and then he showed up the next day, he said, this is real. It happened, and you have to trust it. And that's something that was, again, a validation of my experience. And that was very moving again, because Dominic really insisted on me staying on that path of consciousness, right. Even if at that point I was almost like putting it on hold, not really do much or doing anything with it. And you're also one of the first people in my life that mentioned that I should be writing a book about my experiences, keeping a timeline of what was going on and writing a book. So even if that wasn't really in my mind at that point, Dominic then said to me, you have two things that you have to do in your life. Is number one is you have to write your book, and the second one is to open up a center, like a metaphysical center or research center. This is your path. This is what you have to do. And he didn't mention Ensuho. He didn't mention anything else apart from saying that you'll be a teacher and that you're going to be doing some conferences down the line. He said, but this will come in many years, probably, potentially, because your first steps is to write your book. That's your number one priority.
But, you are making strides, Sebastien. I mean, we only met a year ago. We met at the, Awareness Life Expo in Sacramento, California.
Right.
And
a year and a half ago, maybe?
No, actually it's probably about a year and a month.
Okay.
It was in August of last year. It was like
an anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
That flies.
Yeah. And I had you on Beyond the Strange for, about an hour, I believe, at that time. Mm-hmm. And then we talked again at the expo. And there's been so much happening since then, as you've been talking about, especially with your experience in Scotland. Mm-hmm. But I've been wanting to get your opinion on what you said earlier about everything that's been going on, because God of Thunder had made a good comment in Twitter, #SpacedOutRadio. He says, too many questionable people in it now who are only looking for celebrity and money. Mm-hmm. And this is because we talk a lot. See, that's the thing is, a lot of people don't understand. I don't just have guests on my show. I have friends on my show. And
right.
and just as much as I talk with you off the air, I talk with a lot of people that have been on my show. And I keep in touch because this is important to me. I don't just do this because I want to get famous or I want money or any of that. I do this because I want to find the truth. And we've had a lot of deep conversations. So what I want to know from you is, what does the metaphysical mean to you? Because to a lot of other people, I just feel it's entertainment. It's celebrity status. They don't say that, but I can see that that's where it's going. And like Thunder said, everyone's taking notice. So, you've came up with Unsuho. You're starting your book. You're doing the YouTube channel, which is great, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic videos. And I can only say that nobody has done more for this genre, the metaphysical, than you. And
well, thank you.
With that, because we talked about this, when you talk to me, you made it sound like this is dire, Dave. We need to get this information out. The world needs to hear everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And to describe the word metaphysical to me, the way I see it, is to merge our dimension, our current density, or very dense atmosphere that entraps us into these physical bodies. And the majority of the people who are into the consciousness movement want to speak to God. They want to explore the universe. They want to understand what it means about the world of frequencies and higher dimensions. People even describe, many higher dimensions. But in order to prove it, you would have to be able to see it with your own eyes. Now, the majority of the people nowadays will say, well, that's impossible because you have to be in that kind of meditative state to realize it and to experience it. Well, I disagree with that. And the reason why, it's because when you basically see some ghosts, poltergeists, when you have within this dimension, you have an encounter of some kind with me, with Zo, for example, and other beings like the archangels showing up in my living room in when I could see them with my eyes and the room was lit. There's a communication going on that they trigger. I don't think it comes from me. I'm not that powerful to trigger those. So they want to bring us to their level, and they can do it at will, but we can't. Or the ones who can meditate and the ones who are reaching the nirvana, or whatever, whoever decides to really immerse themselves fully into this realm, they can certainly do it. But again, it cannot be proven. It cannot be physically seen. We talk about the chi energy or the ki energy, and different religions countries. You basically have to realize that why aren't we able to merge that gap between the third dimension to the fifth dimension? And the reason why I'm not mentioning the fourth dimension is because I have now the deep understanding from again, my conversations with Zo and other beings, that the fourth dimension, what people consider as the spirit world, will be merging with the third dimension before we can go to the fifth dimension. Mm-hmm. So my work in the metaphysical work is to merge and bridge the gaps between the third dimension and the fifth dimension, and somehow bring it to this dimension so we can change our reality. So how do we do that? I guess is the next question. And because I would like to bring in more science to the equation, and I think a lot of people already out there are doing that. Nowadays, you can see that the energy of the sun can be recorded, and it has this home frequency that the Hindus knew about. In the Vedic movement, you can see it. It's written up, and you can hear that sound. The same way as the energy and the frequency of the earth is like it's bird-like, and the birds on earth are communicating with the universe using that frequency. So there are some very interesting frequencies out there in the universe, and the only reason why people wish to tap into that through meditation is to communicate with their higher self and the universe and these sort of things. What I'm trying to achieve is to potentially combine many different techniques that are out there and trying to record what's going on in the realms, for example, of Hemisync, which is my next interview on the 14th of September with Paul Elder, who wrote The Eyes of an Angel book. I don't know if you know much about him, but he now teaches out-of-body experiences and even remote viewing, because he can achieve this through the Hemisync method, which is from the Monroe Institute. And that's something that I was very interested in exploring, because you can basically plug people's brains and to detect their delta brains and theta brains waves, and finding out exactly how they can reach that level of consciousness where they can come out of their bodies. And certain aspects of their experiences can be validated by people they encounter. If it's, if in the physical world, if they travel from their locations to where they come from, if it's like 3,000 miles, then that is a confirmation that out-of-body experiences can occur, can be validated by real people. And then you have the realm of the spirit world, where you can understand what is heaven and how people pass over to the higher dimension and go and stay in that state of consciousness, and they remain with their emotions and their personality and all of that. So somehow they can also change their physical appearance to the ones who are experiencing these out-of-body experiences. Paul Elder writes it in his book when he goes back and meets with his mother, who looked like she was in her 30s, and he recognized her. So obviously those beings, if they're in a higher dimension, even if they left their body to go there, they can then take the appearance of whoever they want. And I truly believe that this is what occurs with Zor and with other beings and from a higher dimension. I do believe that the shapeshifter that we hear from the reptilian race is pretty much available to all the races in the universe.
Right.
What I also understood, which was very interesting from a conversation with Zor, and I just mentioned that recently to a friend as well, talking about the Pleiades. And the Pleiades is where those that race from Zor and my star family came from. But the way they describe it is, this is not within your current dimension. The Pleiades do not exist. There are no living organisms within the Pleiades star clusters today, because it hasn't occurred yet. It's in the future. And it occurs on a higher dimension. So whatever frequency they vibrate on is a very different frequency from ours, and which allows them to travel from through space and time. And so whatever we perceive as being real from whatever we explore in our universe today is just a fallacy to believe that whatever is out there we can see with telescopes and these sort of things, because we won't be able to grasp that. and whatever communication we get from, far distant star systems and planets and echoes that may sound alien-like, well, those waves were, probably millions of years old anyway by the time they reach us. So it's pointless. It's completely, useless time and energy spent to do this when the real phenomenon happens outside our laws of physics today.
Okay,
and
Sebastien,
that's what we have to understand.
Great. I'm so sorry. I have to come in. We've got to go to a break, and I apologize for that. So why don't we pick it up right when we come back from break? This is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Cruz. We are speaking with Sebastien Martin, advocate for consciousness, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. As soon as, yes.
Sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruse, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Cruz and SOR.
And welcome back, Space Travelers. This is Spaced Out Saturday Nights, and I am Dave Cruz, your host. We are speaking with consciousness advocate Sebastien Martin. Tomorrow night, Elizabeth Anglin has Psychic Sundays on Spaced Out Sundays. Oh my gosh. Why did that happen? Anyways, those pesky gnomes are still around. On Spaced Out Sundays Cosmic Passport, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. You can also listen to me, Dave Cruz, as I host Beyond Strange Radio Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Go to spacedoutradio.com/paranormal and click on the Beyond Strange button for links and info to the show. We want to welcome everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are live on TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, and KTLK, The Fringe FM as well. Find us on TuneIn and iTunes for download. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Head on over to the website for some great features, from videos from UFO seekers to Contact TV. Shop at our store and pick up t-shirts, posters, and stickers. And don't forget to rock out to our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, who is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. And once again, I just want to thank our guest tonight, Sebastien Martin. Sebastien, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, Dave.
And I want to just quickly, before we get back to where we left off, I want to thank everyone in the Twitter hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I saw that we had some new listeners. One was Rob, Tracy Barnes, I see John T, our regulars, and God of Thunder in there. And also in Spreaker chat, there's also a few new people. Dominique is one. Corey. And I saw one more. Well, they must have. They're on there. Oh, Dino. Thanks, Dino, for showing up tonight. And also in the Facebook chat, I apologize to everyone who's looking for the SOR Space Travelers chat. I tried to put the chat there for tonight's show. It wasn't letting me. It has to be those darn gnomes again. And Dave Scott, all I can say is I'm shaking my hands at them, because I know that's what he would say. So anyways, we'll get that all worked out for you guys. But in the meantime, you can chat at Spaced Out Radio. There is a spot there with Sebastian's great looking picture. So
an outdated one.
Yeah, but still it's a great looking picture. So I'm jealous. What can I say? But no, I really am happy that we're talking, and a lot of people are glad to hear you again on the show, Sebastian.
Well, thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure, and I hope I won't become too much of a bore trying to discuss my experiences and trying to be as humble as possible, because I'm really trying to be. And I would say, don't take my word for it. Trying to go and get the answers for yourself, but at the same time, I know that there are so many opportunities and so many possibilities out there to get the truth, or to get to the truth. My way is the way that rings right to me, and that's why I'm doing it. Otherwise, I would not be doing it in the first place, because being in the consciousness movement is a very fairly new topic for me, as you can imagine. It's I had to learn a lot, and I don't really know much, really, to be honest with you. It's really solely based on my experiences and what I'm capable of tapping into that I'm willing to share. And the best I can, I'm trying to fit it together, because there's some logic behind that. And if I don't really understand the meaning of it on the spot, down the line, it just makes more and more sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to have taken that break and to look back as to what happened to me, and to focus on what needs to be done, because it's all about the steps to take forward, rather than just contemplating any experiences and just sit on it. It's we need to act on whatever we are being shared. If we are being shared information, we have to work towards making it a reality to this dimension. That's what I understand. It's not about it. We no longer have the time to just sit back and just say, okay, let's meditate on it, and just whatever would come, because I think while we can't really change our future, the way I see it is pretty much set in stone. I don't think that, despite all the best attempts, whatever reality that we are creating within this dimension are the way they are. If you are looking at pollution and all the issues that we are currently suffering from nowadays, including cancer, including, you talk about geoengineering,
yes.
All of these topics, all of these realities, to me, and again, I've always been mentioning that on radio shows before, they are just distractions, because what I understand is moving forward, all of these things won't matter anymore. It's just...
right.
Yeah.
It sounds like it. It does sound like it, because earlier I did mention the urgency that you were trying to tell me, and now it seems like there's an acceptance. Is that the case?
Well, in a way, because the acceptance is, yes, we can't change our reality based on whatever we're immersed into. If we try to change that, we will fail miserably, because we cannot change and again, I might be sounding like I'm destroying any kind of hope that exists out there, but it's just that we have to look somewhere else. It doesn't mean that we don't have any choices and we don't have any hope. That's not true. to me, the hope relies on changing this reality based on what we can make it. And so if we can change this reality by focusing on practicing the conscious or being involved in the consciousness movement for ourselves, taking back that energy that has been given away to the people in power today, then we realize that by being connected to one another globally, we can make a difference. And that difference is what I call the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness is what we can experience every day without thinking about it, because other people think for us. And so by giving that power away, and again, this was actually mentioned recently too by, I can't remember the name of the documentary, but it was something that really, really touched me, is that there are apparently about 30 universities around the world that destroyed the research on consciousness because it's too dangerous. If people realize that they can be remote viewers, that they can be psychics, that they can distort space and time, it will completely disrupt the society as we know it today. And that's exactly the agenda. It's to make us sheep, so we can be subjected to many attacks from like geoengineering, through heavy chemicals in our foods, in our water, you name it. It's endless. And that's what I'm saying is, if you realize that you ignore what's going on in the media and you just focus on the inner message, whatever is within yourself. And that I might sound like New Age at that stage, but what I'm saying is there are some deeper truths that could change this reality overnight. And again, this is mentioned through the Rainbow Prophecies, where, within the Zuni nations and tribes, you can see that the trees could grow overnight in this new reality when all the tribes of the world would just merge and discuss things together, and all of a sudden things would change. So how can that happen? Well, that's by completely destroying the current concept of what we call the collective consciousness and tapping into our individual consciousness, which is what we are able to do by taking and empowering ourselves with the light of the universe. And so by doing that, then we can directly connect to the universal consciousness. And that's how we can change the collective consciousness. There's no other way around. You can't just try to convince the government for lobbying change, that change will occur, because there won't be enough people to make that change on the planet so we can see a drastic change that will resolve, the nuclear disasters, the pollution, the geoengineering. It's too late. It is too late. So while people can just suffer from that and wait for their fate and die, we can change this condition by completely removing ourselves from this conditioning of the collective consciousness and tapping into the universal consciousness to understand how we can get that help to change this energy or this frequency that we're completely embedded into, and merge into the higher dimension that will completely make this reality vanish. And for people who believe that we live in a matrix, and I just read that today again, through a post, that some billionaires, spend money to pay some scientists, to get us out of the current matrix. Well, yeah, I do believe that completely. I mean, I've experienced it. I know, this is a fabric. I know this is a made-up reality for humankind. And we are basically just guinea pigs for many races, many ET races, while some other beings who are fully aware of who they are from bypassing that control from the ET race and tapping into the light energy, let's say, call it heaven, call it the light source. It's basically one and the same, to basically understand that we are way more powerful than we are today in this body. And so we can bypass that and completely change our reality by also changing our DNA. Removing diseases, we can change how we look. We can completely change the reality of time. So this is what scares the society today. And living in a difference, and whatever I'm talking about right now in the mainstream media would be completely nonsense, and they would say, well, this is crazy. It doesn't make any sense, because it's the difference that people are fearful of. So if we embrace that difference and we can tap into this energy to repossess this power, then we can change this reality. That's what I'm saying. And I'm trying to do this through Ensuho and through the work I will be trying to focus on with the scientific work that has been done even through quantum physics to, yes, change this matrix and trying to tap into the higher frequencies and higher beings who may be willing to help, who may be willing to show themselves up, not just, through my mind or, through my consciousness, but in our reality, and trying to understand how we can create that, how we can, at will, create that merge our dimension with the higher dimensions. It might be a monstrous task, but it seems to me that's the way to go.
That's what I feel too, and like you, because you've been making strides. I'm not going to say I've been making strides, but I have been learning a bit doing this and talking to people like you and talking to other people who have other different ideas. Do you feel that now that you've been doing what you have been doing for the past year and networking with so many people, that now you're grasping at a better idea of what is happening in this reality?
Yes, completely. I mean, I understand that whatever seems to me special almost or supernatural is not. It's just part of our reality that's currently changing. It may be changing for me in a much bigger way because that's what I'm focusing on. It may be changing for someone else in a much more rapid way because they've been focusing on something else altogether using their own method. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Everybody does their own bit of work out there and then spreading it to the mass media, and it will get out there. So I'm not so concerned about what's going on today with with our weather, even if people are completely embedded into it and are suffering from that because they can't extract themselves from this reality. So this is the way it goes. We have to bypass all these distractions somehow and really get to the nitty-gritty things that really truly make sense moving forward, because there's no other solutions. There's no other way.
Have you been doing meditations?
No, not really.
I appreciate the honesty.
No, well, the reality is that I do somehow meditate sometimes when I relax. So it's more of a relaxation state that I'm more aware of when before I fall asleep, which is probably the laziest attitude you can get, But trying to do this, and again, I think I briefly mentioned to you, and I won't elaborate on this, is that when I get into that state of sleeplessness, or I'm very conscious, but I'm about to fall asleep, then I get some messages, and I do remote viewing. So I move, I go places where I'm fully conscious, I'm fully aware, and I don't try to control it or repeat it. It just happens, and that has been occurring more recently after the eclipse. And it's definitely something I'm paying more attention to, because I know I've tapped into locations and people that I know who can validate what went on. And it's fairly sensitive, topics, and I won't discuss it today. But it certainly validates that remote viewing is something that can be achieved through this state of relaxation without fully meditating. Paul Elder as well through EmiSync describes that state too. The more you do it, the more it becomes easy. It's part of you, and he describes a way that what your body goes into a vibrational state. So there's a vibration that occurs. I don't necessarily feel the vibration when I'm in that state. It just happens. So I wouldn't really say that I'm that sensitive to that. That energy flowing through my body or anything else. It's just something I visualize very, very clearly and very rapidly. And I have this urge of sharing it as soon as I see those kind of things, because it's meaningful. It's meaningful to the people that I can see. And therefore, it also gives me validation of what I'm seeing. And very lately, I've been seeing things that were very true from locations that were, 5,000 miles away from where I live. So obviously, something happens, and I'm on the right track in a way that I know that the tools that I need to develop or work with that already exist is just merging all of these tools and programs that do exist, trying to give solutions to the mass media, which was always my intent to begin with, trying to share this information to the public, because while we are discussing these things today on a radio show, it's still limited to the believers, the people who are in the difference, people who are like us. And that's the difference that I'm trying to make by tapping into a much larger, public, because I'm not interested in the attention or, basically the money or anything else. It's more about sharing whatever feels right to me, and with the most sensible tools you can get that people can understand. It is true that if you somehow share information that may sound like, wow, you communicate with ghosts. Well, they're not ghosts. They're higher dimensional beings that do live in a higher frequency that we may not understand or see with our own eyes or even hear, because again, our range of hearing goes from like 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So even hearing the frequency of the earth, we can't even hear it. So there are certain things that we're very limited to do in these bodies right now. So by embracing different methods that will be allowing us to bypass, this current state, this is what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking forward to work with. How I'm going to be doing that and how long it's going to take me, it might take me a lifetime. I don't know. But it feels that this is the path I'm supposed to be on. It's not about doing more and more interviews, and even if I will still be doing that, it's not just about doing interviews and trying to be entertaining. It's more about trying to really tap into methods that are proven to be right and that can be validated. Again,
when you say that,
relying on facts.
When you say not doing interviews, do you mean like what you're doing now with me, or do you mean with interviewing people?
Interviewing people, yes, like with Ensuho, when I've been doing some interviews, I will still be doing that, but I would try to more and more focus on actual experiments.
Okay. So
that people can understand, not just through like documentaries, but physical seminars maybe that will occur at a certain center that they will create down the line. But it's not going to be something like a sect, or I don't want people to come in just to feel better for themselves. It's not just that. It's more about a studying ground for scientists who are willing to work with certain tools that would be there. So something that is maybe more serious, but it feels that I need to do this down the line.
I'm trying to explain to everyone, if you have a question for Sebastien, please type it in caps so I can see it. And that way, we can get those questions to him. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue with my questions because, right now, guys, like I said, it would be the best time to get your questions answered by Sebastien about this movement. And it's important because I really believe everything is that I've been learning about Sebastien, whether it's ghosts, whether it's UFOs, ET, even cryptids like Sasquatch. Everything is tied in. This is all for the same thing. It's all the same. It's all leading to the same thing, and even the conspiracy theories. What I was going to mention is when you were talking about the different frequencies and the higher vibrations that we're going to be going to from a third to a fifth dimension. I was going to ask you is that what we're seeing when it comes to ghosts?
The ghosts are more on the fourth dimension because, again, what we perceive as being ghosts, some people may not understand what they are seeing. Mm-hmm. It could be a higher dimensional being that is either from the light source or from a whole different planet, showing himself as a light being mm-hmm. that may be perceived as a ghost or as a spirit. But, what's interesting about, again, going back to the medium reading I had in Scotland is that Dominic explained to me that when he communicates with spirits, they clearly say that they are basically on a higher dimension. So it is definitely validated that way, that they are certainly on a higher dimension, higher frequency. But the thing is, spirits or ETs could show up in a reading. So they both have access to the same tools to communicate with us. And when Tracy is asking me on Spreaker, what's my level of psychic ability on 1 to 10? Well, I couldn't really truly answer that question because Dominic, who is a true psychic medium, said to me during that medium reading that I was like him. But I never developed that ability to the same extent as him, even if I could be clairaudient, clairvoyant. I don't necessarily communicate with spirits in the spirit world, even if I had some encounters with archangels and ETs. It doesn't occur at will like the way it does. So I think that if I would say I would be on a magnitude of 10, that would be at his level, where you can actually truly communicate with them very clearly. And that's where I'm not at that stage. And I wish I could be. But this is not something that seems to be my path because I just need to focus on different tools to get to those higher dimensional beings and trying to understand how to bridge that gap between our dimension and the higher dimensions. If it's, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, whatever it is, there must be a way of doing it scientifically, I would say, the same way as people have developed control remote viewing, because they developed a method to do this, and it happens. I mean, when you look at the Stanford Research Institute, they used to receive $100 million budget. 75% of that budget was from the Pentagon. So they spent a lot of money developing control remote viewing, and it was obviously very useful to them. And nowadays, a lot of people are following the work of Lynn Buchanan and, other people, even including Paul Elder too, because he's also teaching it as well through AmiSync. But Lynn Buchanan does mention the Monroe Institute in his books as well, the Seventh Sense. So this is something that is being, again, mentioned, and you can see the correlations. I've done some interviews with Terry Anderson, for example, who lives on Vancouver Island, and she has done control remote viewing. She knows Lynn Buchanan. She's been trained by him. And I didn't really know much about the topic myself until I realized that whatever I experienced in my youth and still today is to do with control remote viewing, even if I have not, learned the methods. I've never done any courses on it. So, but again, everybody can do this. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Is doesn't matter what method you use, as long as you get the answers you wish to have, then it's all good. Because I do realize that, yes, there might be some protections to have. You probably need to protect yourself while doing anything. If it's, Ouija boarding or if it's anything, you have to be able to understand how to protect yourself the same way as I was able to protect myself when I felt attacked. And that's okay. Everybody have different methods to do that, because you don't truly understand what goes on in this dimension through people who can manipulate energy in a good way or a bad way, and what happens in the higher dimensions as well. So it is definitely wise to be cautious in doing whatever needs to be done, but doing it in a very calculated way, so we can achieve a much better state of consciousness accessible to anybody. This is something that really excites me.
Right. We do have a couple more questions coming in, and Perry Darrell had asked, I would like to have the past archives of Dave and Sebastian's interviews. Can you post them? I had mentioned in there, Perrier, that most of them are at YouTube. I'm not sure which Dave you're asking about right now. Right now it's Dave Cruz, but both me and Dave Scott have spoken with Sebastien, and they are on YouTube, so you can find Sebastien and our conversation at Beyond the Strange on YouTube, and of course with Dave Scott it would be Spaced Out Radio. And you can also look in here in Spreaker. Just go to the shows on Spreaker, and you can find them there. If anyone would like to post those, that'd be great. I know Dennis usually does that, or a Trip. That'd be wonderful. So if not, we can get those to you, Perrier, here in a bit. We also have another question, I believe is from Tracy. Wants to know, when we have spirit activity around us, is it typical to hear an actual sound that is low vibratory type noise, or is that the individual between the certain people?
Well, I think, to feel the energy from the lower vibrations or the higher vibrations definitely can be felt and heard. I personally feel them, internally when I go into a meditative state. For example, I do feel that my whole body is vibrating, and when I come out of my body to go and to shoot up straight into space at the speed of light, because it could happen very, very quickly, then to that extent, it's more of a sensation rather than hearing it. However, I did hear some very low frequencies, like I mentioned earlier, when I was meditating in my son's bed, for example, when it was a very low frequency, like a humming, like a home type of sound that was very deep, very piercing, but through my body, and it was resonating throughout my whole core. So yes, I could feel it and I could hear it that way. Once again, it's really personal, because to understand exactly what occurs at that stage, I can't explain it. It's just something that occurs. I do believe that everyone can fully experience that at any level. I think it's something that anybody can access. I don't think it's just for me or someone else who just meditates. What's interesting about frequencies is the people also suffering from tinnitus, when they hear this high pitch, in their heads 24/7, which is also like an imbalance of frequencies in their head. Well, that's very interesting, because it's almost as if certain frequencies are trying to, go through someone's heads and going through their spirit, but those people are blocking it. They're not welcoming it, and that's actually the case with my wife. She's not a person who will be welcoming such experience, even if she would like to. It's a very interesting, situation. She has physically suffered from many ailments, as I already mentioned before. And she understands that, yes, there is probably an afterlife. She's okay with it. She also has seen UFOs with me. She took a picture of one, yet she doesn't care. She's the kind of a person who would not seek answers to what she's experiencing. And there are many people like that simply are happy within this dimension. They don't want to seek any further truth. They are okay with, unfortunately, suffering from this reality, and they feel that they can't escape it. They would like to somehow understand what's going on, but sometimes it just goes beyond them. They are not interested to put the work into it to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm a very different person. I want to seek the truth. I want to, explore that. But this is part of my being, and this is part of my life, like breathing. I need it. My wife doesn't need it. And that's entirely up to her, and I can't change her. I can't force it onto her.
And again, mentioning the Matrix part of this conversation, a lot of people do believe that we are, in some sort of computer-based reality, if you will.
Yes.
And perhaps what it is, I don't know why. Maybe it's a glitch, who knows? But some of us are realizing that is the case, that, everything else, to everyone else, this is reality. There's nothing else going to come out of it. But for us, we know that there is something different for whatever reason. And perhaps that's the case with a lot of people who just don't want to wake up. It's not that, they don't want to. It's just they can't.
No.
They can't.
I think deep down, it comes down to your agenda as a spirit being. If you basically, let's say, we assume that we all come from the spirit world and we are all energetic beings, we reincarnate into this body from the light source directly, and we come down here with a mission. We want to feel what it's like to experience trauma, what it's like to experience a war, even being like a murderer. All of these emotions are not felt in the spirit world. And yet, all of these emotions that we experience in this low vibrational world, we have to experience them on this earth because it's not experienced anywhere else. So the compassion cannot be felt if you don't have trauma or war. And therefore, if you basically are here to have an experience and learn from it, you may live this life right now as yourself. You could be like a radio host. I'm Sebastien. We have different lives. We have different experiences every day. Mm-hmm. Well, this is something that we agreed to begin with, and this is basically what I truly understand is that we are going to be dying at one point, going back to the spirit world, and thinking, okay, well, we've learned from those experiences. We can either decide to remain spirit guides ourselves, or we can reincarnate again and be completely on a different scale. It's not karma. In that sense, we can decide to incarnate and volunteer to incarnate into someone else's body if we decide to be a woman again, or if we decide to be a murderer or a savior, whatever it is. That doesn't really matter. It's just a part of the experience. And so, that's the reason why we are not here to change people. We may influence their decisions or their life experience, but we are not here to change them. The reason why you mentioned earlier is this is like an accepted reality. We just have to go with the flow, and that's the way it is. We can't change it. Well, in a way, yes, because if we die and we go back into the spirit world, whatever we've experienced in this life form will become almost like meaningless. Mm-hmm. It just becomes an experience. All the emotions attached to it can be very interesting, and I'm sure within the spirit world we can learn from it. But what is the real purpose if it's not other than just an experiment? So if we decide, let's say, as a spirit, and again, I've experienced it, so I can speak from my own experience, is from the spirit world agreeing to help an ET race in the cosmos at any kind of dimension you can imagine, then you volunteer for this experience as much as you volunteer to incarnate on Earth. There is no real change there. The ETs have a soul themselves. They obviously have an agenda. They have an experience that they want to explore for themselves. And then down the line, they have better technologies. They have better tricks that we have within this dimension to potentially split the spirit energy that we have. That's what I've experienced. I know, for example, that my own energy on Earth has been split before by the Pleiadians to experience other realities on other star systems, and I'm fine with it. I don't really care. It's part of the experience. And what's interesting is how we can communicate with those other energies that are part of me in other star systems. And I had the fortunate event of communicating with those blue beings that communicated with me, saying, you are aware of me and I'm aware of you, and we saw each other through the dream world. It's because, and that became very vivid in my mind, and I could control that. So when you are in control and you feel fully conscious and aware in a dream state, which is exactly what Paul Elder does through EmiSync. This is where you can learn more about where you come from and what's our purpose on this planet. But it's just an experience at the end of the day.
I believe Tracy had a question in the Spreaker chat, and I apologize. I am trying to get back to it, but it has to do. Let me see, and I know it's wow. Perrier is talking French.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty awesome. I wasn't expecting that. So you could take that one. Okay. Tracy says, why do spirit become more active when there is renovations or disruptions in the mortal world? And do they feel vibrations on the other side? Or because they're watching us and more pissing them off? So well, no, I'm sure you can see that question. It's just a little bit down the ways in Spreaker chat. But
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, I guess they do become more active.
So are the vibrations felt in the spirit world on the other side, or even with the ETs? Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. I mean, vibrations are universal. I mean, it's just a frequency basically. So however we communicate with one another is just a frequency. We certainly can change matter within this dimension with our thoughts. We've seen that many times through water particles. 97% of the cosmos is comprised of hydrogen, and we are made mostly of hydrogen ourselves, water particles, and this is how we can truly communicate with one another, how we can hurt one another. Feeling the good vibe or the bad vibe is through frequencies. So there were some lab experiments where you can see some people focusing on changing the pH of water, for example, from 1 pH to 2 pH, and that's been done as well in labs. So we know that we can impact matter through our thoughts. So, and that's also interesting because it's not just by looking at a glass of water; it's simply by changing and focusing on an image. So we can impact matter remotely. It doesn't have to be done within the same room. It could be done, 5,000 miles away. And the same way as we can do it, 50 billion years away as well in the cosmos. If we know where to aim, who to target and who to speak to, I truly believe that there's a certain vibration and frequency that is being communicated and received. So how this communication happens and how there's an actual contact. People, do have channeling. They do communicate that way. I truly believe in that. Even if, some people nowadays would say, no, you can't trust it because, some people could just be delusional. Well, that's true too. I mean, there are some mental issues out there that people suffer from that obviously could invalidate, all of these topics. But at the same time, there are some scientific facts, scientific data that exist today to do with consciousness that we cannot ignore. And this is the power of our minds and our energy, is we can communicate with everybody around the world if we wanted to, the same way as monks would meditate to change a situation by focusing on an event. Well, that happens. So to me, this is it's very simple in a way that we can certainly send out our intent, our energy, wherever we want to be sending it out. The same way as I'm sending my energy today to all the people today that are listening, hoping to sound as clear as possible, even if I'm French.
You're sounding great. Don't worry about anyone in the chat room right now. And you know what? I'm directing this at Leo right now. Leo, you need to knock it off, or else you're going to get booted, and you're not going to be able to come back.
That's okay. It's all right. It's not a big deal. It's fine.
I don't know what your problem is, but you're not funny, and you really need to just stop it. Okay, we're all here to have fun.
Yeah, I don't mind. Seriously, it's no big deal.
Well, I mean, we're here to have fun, though. We're having a good time. We're talking. We're learning a lot, and you talked about distractions earlier, and unfortunately, this is one of those distractions. So,
like I said, it's no big deal. I quite like the jokes. It's not a big deal.
Right.
To me, at the end of the day, I have an accent. I'm trying to do the best I can. Definitely not as clear as possible. I wish, that people could read about all of my experiences clearly via my book. I'm currently writing the fourth chapter of it. So don't worry about that, Leo. It's all fine. So it's going to be fine. It's hopefully I will be able to share more information and to be honest with you, to go back on track with my experience is looking back at those details. It really made me aware of more people in my life that at the time I wasn't really focusing too much time on, and even going back 24 years ago. And while I was in France, I met with Céline, who with my wife and my kids and her kids, and we basically had dinner together, and we talked about that out-of-body experience or remote viewing experience I had with that experiments we talked about in the past on radio shows for seeing some objects on a night table. And I had to wait almost 24 years to hear say, yes, it happened. But she was so scared by it at the time, and she never wanted to talk about it, that it was very hard to extract from her. And she's always been fearful of the paranormal and these sort of things in her life. But she opened up and explained to me that was actually related to her dad, who passed away in a car crash. And he gave her this pendant that she never wore at school. And I saw that pendant and I described it very, very, very accurately. And so we are, again, going back to that discussion in France, and it really, really excites me to realize that my experiences can be validated in many ways, but also that remembering facts that occurred when I was 16 years old and the interest I had at the time, I'm now reconnecting to people that share more information and fill the gaps for what I've missed at the time, and it's so enlightening. I even met the son of an astronomer who passed away, which I had a discussion with about ETs at the time, because I never had an ET experience of my own at the time, for what I knew of anyway. But somehow my friend in class talked to me about this very eccentric man who basically had a Stargate in his back garden. And he was going off planets. And he was a very serious guy at the same time. He was an astronomer, and he made the local news, and he was interviewed by a local journalist. And so by researching him again, I managed to track back the journalist, talk to her. I also tracked the astronomer's son, whose experience were also very incredible. And we are still in touch today. We are sharing more information, and we are learning way more about the consciousness movement. And somehow there's synchronicity happening, because whatever he's experiencing in France for himself, other people approached him at the same time without any connection. Like, I didn't connect with them, but they somehow connected with him as well at the same time about the same subject, about the same people. So there's definitely something going on in the fabric of space, that obviously push us to get those answers at that specific time, which are very timely. And that's what I call synchronicity. And I always pay very much attention to those synchronicities in my life and other people's lives, because it's important. And I do believe that it's all part of what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm glad that this is offering more content to the book I'm writing, more details, way more than what I could even talk about on the radio. Yeah. So it is exciting to me too, because I'm looking forward for the next chapter as well, because I will be offering way more details of what happened, and hopefully bypassing the French accent. So that's going to be good.
I'm sorry. I'm going to hear the accent when I read it. So
that's true.
It's too late.
Yep. You're traumatized,
late, Sebastien. I'm just going to hear it. We got about 5 more minutes until we come up to our next break. What would you like to cover more in the material that you're going to be writing that you haven't really talked about already, as far as being interviewed and that sort of thing? Is there something specific that you want to concentrate on in your book?
Yes. Well, like Alan just mentioned about the Earth rising frequencies or resonance for the Schumann resonance.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting topic. I know a lot of that has been also mentioned online and on Facebook and so on. To know what is real and what is not. I think at the end of the day, I don't really know how to link the Schumann resonance, which is arising from our own consciousness, with the consciousness of the planet. So, in my opinion, that resonance, that frequency, is there are two distinctive frequencies in my opinion. So the way I'm seeing it is the Schumann resonance is more affiliated with our current dimension, while what we're trying to achieve belongs to a higher frequency, which cannot be even detected by the Schumann resonance. So once again, people may see that as a distraction, but I think the major interest or attention we should be focusing on is what we can pick up from new technologies that we can create that would be completely different from the Schumann resonance. And I know of people who are currently installing some electrodes and different systems around the planet to detect different types of frequencies to see how we can impact the planet on a higher dimensional level, because the current dimension is pretty much set in stone. We can't change it, but we can certainly move away from that to embrace something that is very different, that cannot be detected or even analyzed today.
Okay. And before we do get to our next break, man, we're already coming up on the last hour. That's really
true.
I told you it goes by quick.
It does.
Tracy again wants to ask a question, and she is asking in the Spreaker chat, some people can see dimensions. Can you see them, Sebastien?
Oh yes, I mean I've explored higher dimensions. It's very subtle though. It's almost like water-like. Moving up from one dimension to another could be experienced in different ways. I mean, I've experienced it in many different ways. It could be like going through water, almost traveling through water from air to water or going underwater. But there's a very thin veil. It's a very thin veil of water you pass through to get to a different dimension. And when you get there, especially when you communicate with Pleiadians, which are much higher dimensional level, or even archangels or spirit guides, you basically just discover that there are almost like different tastes. There are you can taste color, you can taste sounds. It's a very different vibe in a way, because you can't experience that in the human form. So doing that through the spirit world or through an outer body experience, through the consciousness, then yes, you can certainly feel differences between different types of level of consciousness or frequencies, because they are very different from one another. And certain beings will feel better, for example, to downgrade their own frequency to communicate with you, because maybe for you to go up to their own frequency might be too much for you to bear or to understand, because they move too fast. Their frequency will be too rapid, and therefore you might not be able to comprehend what's going on. So they have to lower their own frequency in order for you to feel comfortable with theirs. That's pretty much the way I've experienced it. I've also gone to different dimensions that were very dense, very thick, very oppressing. That I could not really stay long in those kind of frequencies, because they were just way too. They were changing me, or in a way that was not for the better. Right. So I went away. I moved away from those frequencies, which is okay. It doesn't mean that I could embrace everything that's out there, because that's why you need to protect yourself. That's how you need to know how to put yourself away from all of these traps that potentially do exist in the spirit world.
Do the archangels or the ETs let you know about that?
No, unfortunately not. That's something I had to experience firsthand. Yes. Yeah.
Huh.
They never warned me about the dangers of different frequencies. They certainly warned me about the agendas that different ETs had. So on the spirit level, which allowed me to go back to the spirit world or even the source, going back to that and then traveling through the cosmos and seeing the different race of ETs that had different vibrations, I could see it while being in a spirit state. So I was not really immersing myself into their own frequency, but I could feel it. I could certainly feel the differences. And it's almost like when you feel someone's, intention, or, you feel a good vibe or bad vibe, it's exactly the same thing.
Right.
But I could also taste it. I could feel it. It was very different in a way.
All right. I'll tell you what, we'll pick that up. But I want to talk more about archangels, and I want to talk more about your visions. And we'll get to that in the next hour. So this is Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. We are speaking with Sebastien Martin, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. This is just getting started.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Cruz and SOR.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Spaced Out Saturday Nights with me, your host, Dave Cruz. Tonight we're speaking with Sebastien Martin, advocate for consciousness, experiencer, entrepreneur. He's just a really nice guy. He's got a great accent, by the way. I don't care what they say. Anyways, remember to tune in to Elizabeth Anglin has Psychic Sundays on Spaced Out Sundays, Cosmic Passport, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. You can also listen to me, Dave Cruz, as I host Beyond the Strange Radio Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. And remember you are listening on, if you're listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are live on TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, and KTLK The Fringe FM as well. Find us on TuneIn and iTunes for a download. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Head on over to the website for some great features From videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV, shop at our store and pick up t-shirts, posters, and stickers. And don't forget to rock out to our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, who is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. And once again, I just want to say thank you so much to our guest tonight, Sebastien Martin. Sebastien, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Dave. So going back to the question you had before about archangels, before we move to that topic, I would like to discuss an experience I had in England before going to Scotland. And I was talking to my wife in the middle of the night, and we were basically discussing the sale of our property in Canada, which we have a 13-acre farm, and we're trying to sell it because the business that we sold was moving away. All the products we had in the warehouse moved to Vancouver, so we basically had no real need for the space, and so we decided to downsize and move up to another property. So we were still toying with the idea of keeping the space for Ensuho, because it was all paid for and we didn't really have to worry about a mortgage. But the idea of having a studio within that space would have been ideal. But again, the maintenance of the grounds would have been a bit too much. And that would have included having more people. And so we decided to sell or put it for sale. And as we were discussing, again, me saying to my wife at 2:30 in the morning, we could not sleep, in England, and I basically told us maybe we should not sell. And at that specific moment, I received a text message from a friend of mine who lives in Mauritius, which I've met through my interviews, with a lawyer from Britain. And again, talking about synchronicities, Jonathan is his name, went to the same school as my wife in England. So they lived in the same town and they went to the same school. Even if it was like five years apart. And as we connected over the month, he basically explained to me that as a lawyer, he had some incredible experiences similar to mine. And while living in Mauritius, he basically explained to me that a being showed up in his living room that was like Zor, my younger brother, from the Pleiades. And he basically described him to me, and the details and whatever he was describing was so interesting that when he even showed me the backdrop of where he lived in Mauritius, it was overlooking a mountain that looked like the mountain I'm seeing from my property. So it was so weird, like the rapport we had a connection somehow, and he sent me that text message saying, I had this most, vivid dream about your property that he's never seen. And I never showed him pictures of it. And he said to me, I went through those terraces and those, beds and of gardens and so on. And he said to me, I saw those structures, like those white rocks that were coming out of the ground, like all over the place. And that was so striking, because I said, well, funny enough, as you are contacting me, we're discussing the property. And he said, yes, it felt very urgent. And I was quoting you to say, don't sell it. And so I said, well, that's interesting, because I was also planning on keeping it. And the white structures, the white monolith that were coming out of the ground that I put up there, or I will put up there in the future, were supposed to be some kind of energy, gatherers. I don't know, some kind of receptors. And I had this vision a month before that. I knew that I was supposed to be doing this, and it was so odd that he reminded me of it when we had this discussion. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to Scotland, a few days later, and I met with Dominic, he right away, when we came to that topic, even if we even didn't discuss it, he said to me, you have to sell your land and go to the new one you purchased, And I was like, wow, that's really coming out of nowhere. But that came from my best friend who passed away, from France. And he was almost like telling me about the future, saying, you will be going to this new property and you're going to be living there, you're going to be happy there, but you're going to be buying another property down the line where you're going to be building your metaphysical center. And he saw the white rocks also, which was very interesting. So now 2 people plus myself, saw those white rocks emerging from, the grounds of the property. So again, the message was, meaningful to me at the time, thinking, well, okay, if I need to do a metaphysical center, that's quite different from whatever agenda I had with Ensuho for trying to do interviews. So now we're branching out to interviews to discuss the topic of consciousness, to physically doing the experiments on site to achieve that and to prove it to the world that it does exist, and we can then share it on YouTube and through the NCO channel. So it kind of makes sense that, yes, it felt right for him to share that with me at the time. And I embraced it fully, and also it kind of helped me lift some kind of burden I had on my shoulders, thinking, well, now I've got some steps to reach, and I know that, yes, I need to write my book first. I need to put NSU on hold a bit. I can still do some interviews, but it won't be as intensive as what I was planning on doing, which is okay, because down the line, it will serve a higher purpose. And I'm okay with this. There's no real stress to have or pressure to have, because, again, I'm really doing this, because I want it to happen. But again, I don't really have to do this. I could just easily retire and be happy with the life I have. But it's still a nice, hobby to have. If I can achieve this and include more people to get those results and compile them, to me, it is to do with like God's work in a way, or archangels, because
it sounds like
yeah. I mean, in a way, it's something that seems very clear in my head and my mind, and that I need to do, and that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that it comes from a higher spirit, but at the same time, this message, this advice was given by my friend who passed away. So somehow, it does come from the spirit world. And at that time, the past, present, and future means nothing to them. They pretty much can travel through, dimensions and space. So, it's interesting to know that from the spirit's point of view, and even what happened in Zimbabwe, I don't know if you remember that aerial, place in Zimbabwe in 1994.
Was that with the children in the school?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about that experience is, while all these children saw, these grays, coming down with their, UFOs and being interested in abducting them pretty much and taking them on board, they certainly shared a message with them saying, we basically have seen a future, your future, and the world is completely decimated, and all the trees are down, and all human beings would be dead. So they came as a warning with a certain message of compassion, saying, we want you to, change that. But realistically, from 1994 to today, we made the world worse than it is, or than it was. So we haven't really helped ourselves in that sense. But I think the reason why we are now embracing more and more the realities of consciousness and meditation and all of that, that's part of our lives. Even, schools are using meditation nowadays with children, because it's very important. And we need this to change our state of consciousness and change our reality. There's no other way. So if we want to change the world, it's not by trying to change laws and trying to convince lawmakers to change different policies in place, because that would take way too long, in my opinion. So going back to the archangels, I think any kind of battles that you read through the Bible and all of that, with Michael and everything else, even after the tribulations. By the way, it's very interesting that date of September 23rd, 2017. Are you aware of that date?
does sound like it might be related to Nibiru.
In a way. So basically what happened is part of the Revelations 12 in the Bible, and I'm not really, a Bible reader or, a Christian myself, but I certainly am aware of that passage from what's going on right now in the media and so on, and, through the Facebook and so on. Mm. And I had some friends, and funny enough, my mechanic approached me with this, and he's not a religious, person himself, but he heard that September 23rd was going to be a major event for him, and I didn't know anything about it at the time, and I looked it up, and it really made sense to me that there is going to be something happening, potentially that is being mentioned in the Bible for when Virgo and the moon is going to be at the feet of Virgo, and with 12 planets, I believe, there's Leo wrapping, the Virgin. I'm not really quite sure exactly, but that's pretty much the definition of an actual, astronomical fact that will occur on September 23rd, 2017. And 7 years after that will be, according to the Bible anyway, the people consider it as almost like the second coming of Christ. So there will be some wars going on between the archangels, with Michael is going to be involved, I believe, and all of that. Well, that's interesting because to me, for more and more people merging with Nibiru, like you said, or even Planet X, I think there will be some major event. April of 2024 is when we'll have another eclipse that will occur that will make almost like a cross with the eclipse that will happen in August. And it's going to be forming like a cross. Like they're definitely going to be creating that on that day. And according to the Bible, there are specific days mentioned that after that event on September 23rd, I think it's like 1,090 days or something. After that, which will be leading us on the 11th of November of 2024. So I mentioned that before. My encounter with Zor happened on that day, on 11th of November.
Right.
So maybe the meaning of 11/11 is maybe reflective of that for whatever happens, synchronicity or, whatever it is. It could be a major event that will be occurring then.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we're getting a lot more eclipses lately. There was a series of lunar eclipses over the last few years with the blood moon eclipses, if you remember that, where significant events were supposed to happen, or where they were supposed to happen after these events that are still to come. It's very possible. I mean, we do have a lot of that in a lot of ancient texts with these eclipses. But Sebastien, I need to go back a little bit. I have to apologize to John T in our hashtag Spaced Out Radio Twitterverse because he had a question a while back ago in the last hour. For some reason, my Twitter's not updating. He wanted to ask, what does Sebastien think of consciousness expanding drugs like DMT, ayahuasca, or others? Well,
I mean, anybody can experience different states of consciousness through different drugs, and I'm not an advocate for that personally because I personally, my body would not agree with them. It doesn't really agree with me at all. I tried marijuana once and it was not a good trip. So I don't really enjoy drugs personally. Some people have had great success with different types of drugs, even ayahuasca, which is something that even my friend Jonathan used while being in South America. And that's good. If people can experience, a higher level of consciousness through those kind of, drugs, then, illegal or not, then, I can't be an advocate for that personally, but if they do experience a change, I mean, shamans use them all the time. And they have different ways of experiencing that too. So, there is some truth to it. It helps, but there are also some other ways to do it. just by meditating. I don't think that the Buddhist monks would just try to take any drugs to reach the level of nirvana, for example. But everybody have their own answers. But I also believe that changing certain drugs can not only impact your psyche in a bad way as well as a good way. The bad way will be more long-lasting than the good way. That's what I understand from some drugs. So people have to be cautious in using them, obviously. So the reason why I personally never really shows the route from mushrooms to whatever you want is because I don't want my judgment to be guided by some kind of psychedelic drugs that may completely alter my reality based on what I'm supposed to be experiencing by changing my vibration.
Right. And also, I have another question. Again, I apologize, God of Thunder, in the hashtag Spaced Out Radio Twitter, he asked almost an hour ago, my gosh, I don't know what's wrong with my Twitter tonight. Everything's going nuts. He wants to know which ET races are controlling mankind.
Well, that's a good question. There are many different types of ET races that are not so much controlling mankind. They are using us as their guinea pigs. So we are basically within a petri dish. And so whatever we experience, if we belong to a certain race, and don't forget, we volunteered to help them in the first place. When people say, they basically bypass my free will and they use me, well, that's not entirely true. The reason why is because in the universe, and especially in the spirit world, I don't think that good and bad do exist. I think what they want to cherish more and foremost is the experience. And that can help expanding the universe. If we are within an expanding universe, this is how we can truly benefit from the yin and the yang. So we basically need one and the other to experience, full experiences, like real deep experiences. So to know that we have, let's say, the reptilian race or the Pleiadians and the Greys and then other types of races, sure, they do exist. They are there. To know if some are here to completely destroy humanity, I don't think so, including the reptilians. I don't think the agenda from the reptilians is to take over the planet and destroy us completely or humanity. And even if they do, on the spiritual level, the experience would have been very invaluable, and we could either decide to reincarnate somewhere else as a reptilian. We could decide to incarnate on a different star system. So in the spirit world, what I'm saying is it doesn't really matter, who is in control, and we can decide to bypass whatever ET race we believe that is in control of us. Because if we understand where we come from and we decide to activate our free will in the process to say we no longer agree to that experience, then not only we may know too much based on what we agreed to begin with, but we might also interrupt a mission that may end up badly in a way of someone's becoming utterly depressed and potentially committing suicide over it for not willing to carry on the experience. So we don't really know. I think just by agreeing to be part of his planet is already an experience of its own. We agreed to be part of his dense atmosphere and in these physical bodies, to have the physical aches and pains and to experience mortality. And it's not about experiencing immortality in a human form. That's completely wrong. It's all about the physical experience, the mental experience of meeting one another. And again, going back to the love aspect of the spirit world, which is again kind of new age, for saying it's all about love. Well, it is all about love because that's what the spirit world knows about. That's all they know about. So for them, it's all about unity and trying to expand the universe. It's not about a destructive agenda. It's all about the experience. That's what I could say about that.
And not necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
whatever we conceive as bad is, based on our reality.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I'm sure, little love can go a long way. And I wanted to bring up, there's a couple of questions in Spreaker I wanted to get to. Actually, one is more of a comment, comes from Alan Karcher. Sebastien, I'm in the camp of Mayan 2012 believers. As the high energy particles from galactic center enter our solar system, Earth will become uninhabitable for third dimensional beings. Mm-hmm. Estimates are within the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that comment?
I would probably agree with that. Based on what we're currently experiencing with the high levels of CO2 in the atmosphere, that we're experiencing more and more asthmatic conditions. My son suffers from asthma. A lot of children suffer from asthma. And more people will be suffering from lack of oxygen. I mean, I'm pretty lucky to live on an island that, is pretty clean, where we don't have too much pollution, even if, it does exist. You talk about geoengineering, basically polluting the atmosphere with aluminum and all sorts of different heavy metals that are going into our soil, getting into our food, getting into our water. That doesn't really serve us, obviously. But what I've learned recently, which is interesting, it's also about masking what's going on around the sun, trying to hide potentially Nibiru or Planet X. And I had some very smart people with PhDs and so on who are aware of that and say, yeah, it does exist and it's there and it's coming. And so as to know if Planet X would be coming into 2024, maybe, I don't know. I can't say. I'm not a scientist myself. What I can say is there are some changes occurring. I also heard that we live within a binary star system, that potentially there will be some, star dwarf coming in and on course with planet Earth. Who knows? I mean, we are a very fragile, humanity. At the end of the day, we could die off, in an instant, at the blink of an eye, without really being aware of it. And, scientists may be hiding the truth for not creating a panic. Mm-hmm. They may try to work towards systems and maybe through the secret space program, maybe having all those trillions of dollars disappearing in a defense budget to go towards those machines that could be destroying those star dwarfs on their course up to Earth. Maybe, I don't know, but I think that it is true that we are not really getting any better with our way of life. Definitely we are becoming more and more comfortable in our way of life. We have more, TVs and more this and more that, but it doesn't mean that, the basic conditions of breathing air, if it's, becoming more rare. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is also the correlation between the trees and the CO2 factor, knowing that the more CO2 there is in the atmosphere, the more CO2 the trees will absorb and create more oxygen. So we may potentially see that too, that the plants will take over that system, but to what extent and at what pace, I have no idea. I'm not a botanist or biologist, I couldn't tell you. I'm just saying that currently the transitional period that exists between our current state of dimensional state to the higher dimension state could be that we may be merging without noticing it, because we're going to be embracing a higher frequency that our collective consciousness will have to be embracing all of a sudden through trauma, war. I don't know what it is, but something will happen and will inevitably happen that will be moving us up to the higher dimension, a higher frequency, where we will be able to change our DNA, adapt to whatever system we've created, and realizing, wow, all of the stuff around us is meaningless. We could change it. We can actually modify it at will. And that's where the true power lies. To me, it's...
yeah, I have to agree.
That dimension for sure will die off because we can't sustain it. That's true. And doesn't matter what you do today, it's not going to be viable for a very long period of time. That's the reason why, all of our governments right now are looking at, off planets right now, to live off planets, because, they know that we reached, a time in space right now where we can't we can't live on the Earth anymore. It's going to be becoming harder and harder with all the pollution we've created and the lack of fish and the higher population and our need for more food, and more water, and it's becoming so and more so rare.
It really sucks, because at the same time, over the last 150 years, mankind has gotten so advanced with everything, with technology, with power, you name it. And unfortunately, it's just backfired on us because, like you just said, now there's not going to be any fish. Look at Fukushima. Look at our air quality. Everything that's going on, it's because we're doing it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. We are, but I think this is again repeating history as well, Dave. I think what we've experienced today, and I think Graham Hancock, mentioned that at a lecture once, where he said that if we had ancient civilizations, which we are aware of, and we know that before the oceans rose, there were some other civilizations that were probably millions of years old, but again, we forgot history. We don't remember. We don't know. Nothing is written. Everything has vanished. We could see traces of footprints somewhere else that were, a few millions of years old, that completely destroy all of our theories about, Homo sapiens and, all the other species of prehistoric humans that were on Earth, because this is very recent, but there are some ancient races that probably lived on the planet that were able to do what we do today and much more. Mm-hmm. They probably understood the nuclear, technology as well, and all of these technologies, even time travel, but all of these beings probably no longer reside, here. If they do reside here as multidimensional beings, the same way as you go to Telos, for example, at Mount Shasta. If you look at races like the Atlanteans, for example, that were there, they were pretty evolved as a race. Very if advanced. That race ever existed, because again, if you look back at the history of Atlantis, it was mentioned by Plato, and Plato was just a disciple from Socrates, in ancient Greece. Right. And if you look back at that story, it's actually one of Socrates' disciples who became a disciple, who talked about his uncle, who apparently went to Egypt and talked about, or saw some kind of text about Atlantis as a form of society that collapsed. And the discussion was about the Republic, was about the fate of the Republic in Greece at the time. Mm-hmm. So in the context of societal traumas and dramas, at the end of the day, it was more of a legend, and they were talking about legends as well as Atlantis. So within the same dialogues, they were mentioning Jupiter, something, I don't know, but as a god that was to do with the same story. So we don't really know for fact that Atlantis actually existed, because the only really facts of it we have is through the Critias books from Plato as a philosopher, from like 4 before Christ, I think, 4th century before Christ. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. But at the same time, there are for sure traces today and proof of artifacts and footprints, like I said, around the world that were seen alongside dinosaurs. You can't deny that. You can't deny that.
Right. No, right. Absolutely. I mean, I have been getting notifications, posts from a friend and a friend of the show, Alex Mastretta, who is a real researcher, parapsychologist researcher as well, who his whole life is based around cryptids and cryptozoology, in the sense of sauropods and other animals that we know had lived in the past. And he sends me the alerts and he posts them in the Facebook page. showing that archaeologists today are finding these finds. It's amazing how fast they're finding them. I'm sorry, I have to change the subject because now we are getting into the last half hour. Amazing. Like I said, I knew this was going to happen. It always does. But in the Spreaker chat, KTLK The Fringe, Joe Roop, who is a huge fan of yours, by the way.
Yes. Hi, Joe.
And who's also a big fan of Spaced Out Radio. He listens every night. He asks, not to get deep on the Bible thing, but what does Sebastien think about the Book of Enoch? And this ties into what we were talking about, ancient texts and writings.
Right. To be honest with you, I'm not an erudite in the Bible or the Book of Enoch. If you can refresh my memory as to know what Enoch or who Enoch was, I do believe what I remember about Enoch is that wheel that was probably like a spacecraft or something. I don't know, but there was some kind of ET influence with Enoch. I would have to look it up because I really don't remember much about Enoch. But I don't know if it has to do with the Anunnaki as well. Not if there was a correlation.
It talks about the Anunnaki. It talks about the Watchers, the ancient giants, the Nephilim.
Right.
The fall. It's basically a lot of what wasn't in the Bible. That it was deliberately left out, possibly from the Catholic Church. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept that seems to have came out within the last 50 to 60 years. And again, that I don't know if it contradicts or whatever, but I mean, I personally hasn't read the Book of Enoch. I'm still I still need to do that. Sorry, everyone. I promise I'll get on that. But no, it does talk a lot about a lot of the topics that we talk about, like I said, including giants and archangels.
Right. Well, to me, the Anunnaki, fact, on the tablets that were found, and also the stories and what I've heard from Zoe telling me about, the Anunnaki waiting for humanity in the fourth dimension. That was a warning message, and somehow I had interactions with I think it was Enki in at what I believe to be the source, but he was not at the source. He was sharing information with me to enlighten me about the state of the universe, for saying, there was a God, and I absorbed God's energy when he screwed up pretty much, for creating the light, through space, almost like viruses. The way he was describing it was the complete opposite of what you would think as, God doing and this sort of thing. So if the Anunnaki were basically a race that would be controlling humanity, I do believe that they are definitely part of the creation of humanity, but they are not the only ones. And the reason being is because there were some other races out there that were involved in the manipulation of our genes to create, who we are today. So, like, someone else, said before, how many ET races are in control of humanity? Well, I think we have to thank probably many ET races out there that contributed towards the genome pool to be who we are today. So, like, everybody has the reptilian, brain that we all have, and we have basically different types of abilities, like psychic abilities that will be coming from potentially the Pleiadians or some other races. But there are some correlations, and one race support another if we are who we are today. And so to say that the Anunnaki are waiting for us in the fourth dimension before we can transition to the fifth dimension is something that is very concerning in a way, that maybe they wish to control us or take control over humanity I'm not sure. I'm not sure about what that means yet. It could be a warning, could be something that we have to watch for. We could be apprehensive of it. We could just say no. We have the free will to refuse their interaction with us. How? Maybe through this level of consciousness. So how it basically interacts with Enoch, I couldn't say. I've lost the track on that. I'm not sure if you can elaborate on that. Maybe if Joe can ask specifically more about what he's looking for through the Book of Enoch, maybe I could just elaborate
That's
on
okay.
it. But otherwise,
it's funny because Joe was actually saying, just move on to the next question, Dave.
Okay, all right, good.
I'm so behind, it's not even funny. But I appreciate you spending the energy on that one.
Trying.
It's all good. No worries, Sebastien.
Okay.
I'm actually scrolling to his question right now, and I don't know if anyone's put out any more questions out there because I'm only looking at the ones in caps. So remember, people, put that on caps. And oh yeah, that's right, Perrier Darrell. What are his thoughts about Morgellons as a fungal confection? Some are thought to be more sensitive or are a paranormal opening frequency. Where is their origin or intention? That sounds like 3 or 4 questions in one.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and tackle the first one?
Okay.
What are your thoughts about Morgellons? That's the disease that some believe is caused by chemtrails and geoengineering.
Right. Okay. Well, to be honest with you, I'm aware of a different type of disease that is probably provoked by that as well. And that's the multiple allergies. Like it's a symptom that my half sister suffers from, where she's allergic to everything. So she cannot even be in a room with someone who had regular shampoo, wore perfume, who even smoked tobacco before, who shaved with a regular shaving foam. It's a very, very debilitating situation for her at she's over 20 and she can no longer pursue what she wished to do. She was studying basically arts and design, and she had to put away from school, from everything. She started having like nosebleeds. She could no longer eat normal foods. She could not smoke. She was smoking cigarettes. She stopped everything and became more than the regular New Age person. With she's buying organic fabric and makes her own clothes. It's that drastic. She can't almost like leave her room because she's afraid of even going into a brand new car. She's got type 1 diabetes as well since the age of 11. And she cannot even see a doctor anymore. So she has to be managing her own disease by herself. It's extremely excruciating for me to see that, as an older brother, because she's suffering deeply from this situation and she cannot control it. And she was a normal person before. She was coping with her diabetes, but never like she is today. And she does know everything about chemtrails for sure. I mean, she can certainly, feel the backslash of that, and more people around the world will be suffering from that. And it's recognized in Canada. It's recognized maybe in the US, I believe, but in other countries, but not in France where she lives. So, to have someone like my sister who also communicates with teachers who suffer from the same condition, who can no longer study, who can no longer go to a class. They can't even read a book because they are allergic to the ink in the pages of the book. That becomes extremely, debilitating, because for them, they can no longer function as human beings. It's even rare if they can even, eat properly or sleep properly, and they basically are sensitive to everything, and that's like hypersensitivity. Probably provoked by geoengineering and other problems out there. But once again, we are people of evolution. So if we wish to evolve, we also need to adapt, and we certainly could die off in the process. This is how evolution happened. It's unfortunately it's survival of the of the strongest, and the weaker people who are more susceptible to be affected by those changes will be affected first before anybody else, and that's sad. But there are also whistleblowers for what's going on, because they are the physical proof of what's going on in the atmosphere around us for things that we can't see, but they suffer from physically. And, it's almost at a point where they say, enough is enough, things need to change. And they also know that changing the regulations and the laws is almost impossible, because they suffer from so many issues that one lawsuit cannot solve all the problems. There are some lawsuits happening right now around, Monsanto and around Big Pharma, and they even discovered recently as well that they put nanotechnology in different sweets, many sweets in many foods, for serving different purposes. I mean, how far do we have to go to realize that the system we've created for ourselves is no longer working? That whatever we do today, only serves the big agenda of a society that no longer works for us, that we have to move on to something else. And the something else is, again, the solutions are not in our society the way we are in today. It's not, because we are too embedded into it. And the solution that we have is to move up to the higher dimension and change our reality, change the vibrational state of the foods we eat every day. Because the same way as we can change the pH of water by looking at it and focusing on it, we could do the same thing with foods. And I had a conversation with a person I'm planning on interviewing as well, who had cancer. And that person cured herself of cancer, even if she had 1 month to live. And the doctors couldn't understand her recovery. And she saw Archangel Michael showing up, in a bedroom in the hospital, and was holding her hand and explained to her that the chemotherapy treatment that she received was energy. And he made her see the different types of energies around her. And now she sees higher, frequencies all around her every day. She sees the atmosphere in a very different state as the way we see it today with our own eyes. So she was left with this. And she was a lawyer, by the way, as well. So she had a very good background. She was dying of ovarian cancer, and she cured herself within 1 month. She was cancer-free after 1 month, for realizing that she could change the energy of whatever she could see around her. So I do believe that stepping up from these dimensions to the next is as simple as visualizing it for ourselves, for changing our individual consciousness, tapping into the universal consciousness, having that help, and then down the line changing the collective consciousness. That's, to me, again, like I said it before and I say it again, this is how it's going to work down the line.
I believe so too. I actually agree with you. There is no thinking. I believe you're right. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Joe had one more question, and he wanted to ask you, is there anyone who Sebastien himself would love to have the chance to interview that he hasn't already?
Well, there are many people that I would love to interview, but most likely I would definitely like to emphasize on the work of some scientists and PhDs who looked into the consciousness movement, because that kind of validates, whatever people experience, because it gives us some answers and more clues about what needs to be done. Like that scientist who is still alive today, who did this experiment in the US, to change the pH of water. A simple experiment. It can be done with frozen particles of water as well, for subjecting them to different types of frequencies of love or hatred. That can have a whole different impact on how the water particles would look like, under a microscope. It's funny that the Ohm energy or the sun energy or sun frequency, addressed to water particles will make or would transform the water particle look like a sun, which is very interesting, with like sun rays and everything, and it's a very geometrical figure,
Cool.
very interesting figure. So, I think that this is again where I'm planning on focusing my efforts moving forward, is to interview more scientists. I would love to be connecting with more institutes out there that would not be linked to more darker, deeper agendas, with a Pentagon or something. But I would have to look into that and seeing how it can really serve, the public with whatever content I can come up with. So it's very vast. I mean, there are so many people out there I would love to interview, but at the end of the day, it will come. Time will come, and I would be welcoming whatever will be presenting itself at the time. I don't really worry too much about it now. I certainly I'm more aware of who exists out there who are championing the subject of consciousness through science, and I think this is the way I would like to go myself. As a businessman as well, for what I've done, to remain solid and coming up with more facts. I will leave the consciousness movement through meditation and through the New Age movement to the ones who are already into it, because they seem to be good at it, and there's no wrongdoing. What I'm saying is, I think there are other ways to help the mass population to embrace this movement if they are given the tools to understand it. And I think it's all to do with the understanding and trying to bring down that level of difference that we are all suffering from today. So once we can embrace that as a whole, then we'll have billions of people who will be able to participate in that movement. And that would be, life-changing.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got like 4 minutes before we have to get out of here. So
okay.
I am going to take one more question, and it comes from Tracy in Spreaker chat. And I'm sorry, Tracy, I didn't see it. It's there, like I said, we're over 1,000 comments in the chat room. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. So, Sebastien, sorry I'm new. How can so many people see Archangel Michael in so many places at once?
Well, I think, like I said to you before, I've seen my own soul splitting up by the work of the Pleiadians. So I do believe that the consciousness can be split up at will, as much as, Archangel Michael can be seen at, many different places at once. And what you also have to realize is that we live within a time, frame that has past, present, and future. If you realize that on a higher frequency level, time doesn't matter, you can even go back in time from the spirit world, or go to the future, and you can pause it. Time doesn't matter. Someone could be, dead for, 200 years and still be living in that moment, looking at its dead body, thinking, I need to help that person or something. Or and for them, that moment could just be minutes or seconds. So, this is, how potentially within this dimension, people may see Archangel Michael or other spirits, in different countries at the same time, which, could explain also, Father Christmas, actually be seen at so many places at once or so quickly. This could be explained through quantum physics. Mm-hmm. But if we imagine it, if we can embrace it as potential reality, why not? Because we don't understand what it means to be living within a higher frequency level, all the time. In the spirit world, the time no longer matters. We can change our DNA. We can change everything. Even if DNA may not really exist per se in the spirit world, how people look like I said before, how, an old woman of 80 who died, of cancer comes back as a spirit and into a 35-year-old body, or look like a 35-year-old person to someone else who's still living, but through an outer body experience. Again, this is something that could be easily manipulated through the spirit world.
Right on. Man, what a night, Sebastien. we just blew through 3 hours just like that.
Yes, we did.
I mean, I think that's even faster than on my show, and this was 3 hours.
That's right.
That is crazy. Well, everyone is just loving it. They're saying thank you, and
thank you
great.
all for listening.
Thank
you for having me.
Right. I mean, they love the show. They thought it was a great show. Everyone on Twitter and Spreaker loving the show, loving you. So please, can we get your information now so the listeners can find and learn more about you?
Yes. So the best way to reach me is through nsuho. So they can email me at contact@nsuho. It's nsuho.com. They can also go to the nsuho Facebook page, and via that, they can also reach me personally. I basically have another domain name that I have for the people who can't remember nsuho, and that's consciousnessplus.com. So just tap it in, and you can just go to the website and see the kind of interviews I've done, and there will be more to come for sure. I kind of put it on hold for now, but there will be more interesting interviews coming up. So stay tuned.
Very awesome. Sebastien Martin, thank you so much for being on the show. And once again, you got to come back, man. It's
I will.
It was really awesome. So please.
I always enjoy it. It's always enjoyable. And, if people can cope with my accent, I'm glad to come back.
I don't think they have a problem with it. Only a couple of people, so it's all good. But thank you again, Sebastien, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
All right. You have a good night. All right, everyone. Sebastien Martin, everyone. Amazing information. Please go to nsuho.com, Facebook, Sebastien Martin, and nsuho. Remember to tune in to Elizabeth Anglin has Psychic Sundays on Spaced Out Sundays. Cosmic Passport starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. You can also listen to me, Dave Cruz, as I host Beyond a Strange Radio, Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Everyone stay safe, have a good night, and as always, stay spacey. Asta.
Circling the prey, I push until I break. I feel them start to scrape. The core of all I am is chiseling away, and every speck of life is gonna rot away in time. We touch a light or touch a stone, it's a grand design. Amidst of petrified hearts and I'm lost inside. We all self-destruct, love is to deny. And that is life. And the clocks, they never stop, they